This podcast is sponsored by Axa Insurance. Axa offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the Axa Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to Axa is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to axa.ie. Axa Insurance stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of AgriFocus, the podcast brought to you by Agriland in association with Axa Insurance, live from Japan. We are in Japan for a trade mission led by Burke, along with the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, to promote Irish produce in markets in this region. I'm Stella Meehan, and today on the podcast in Japan, I will be joined by Beef and Livestock Sector Manager with Burke, Joe Burke, Director of Meat Industry Ireland, Dale Crammond, and Agriculture Minister himself, Martin Heydon. But just to give some context about the Japanese market, more than a decade ago, Japan was identified by Burke as a priority market with high potential growth for things like Irish dairy, drinks, meat, and even seafood products. So Irish agri-food exports to Japan have exceeded €1 billion in value since 2019. Japan is the number 2 beef importer in the world, and in recent years, Irish beef tongue has surged in popularity, with restaurant chain Negishi selling beef tongue at 49 locations across Japan to about 100,000 customers per week. And we actually got to sample some of that beef tongue at Negishi. And it really is a delicacy and very, very tasty. They're very big fans of beef here in the Japan region. Similarly, Irish drinks, particularly whiskey, has also seen a surge in popularity in recent years, with exports to Japan growing 32% to 10.9 million in 2024. So Japan is a priority market then for Irish cheddar, with a number of Irish dairy companies travelling on the trade mission to engage in these trade meetings with Japanese customers and clients. And there was also an event held at the Irish Embassy, which is now shared by the Burke Japan office, for Meet the Makers, Irish drinks producers who were over trying to establish contacts and relationships with Japanese clients for their drinks brands. But first we'll start the interview with Joe Burke, and this was out at Expo 2025, which was held in Osaka in the last few days. And Joe was telling us about why he travelled to Japan and Seoul in Korea to try and promote Irish products and where the potential might be. So I began by asking him to let us know what's popular in terms of Irish produce in Japan and where the potential lies.
Okay, thanks very much, Stella. Yeah, really interesting to get the opportunity, I suppose, to use this promotional platform from a meat perspective. I suppose it's an established market to a large degree for Irish exporters, in that we've gained market access for Irish beef in the last decade, and we've seen considerable success there. Similarly, it has always performed very well, even over recent decades, for Irish pig meat as well. But from a beef perspective, really the main item that I suppose the industry has primarily focused on has been the beef tongue, and currently about 95% of the production of beef tongues from the industry would be destined for this market. So, you know, that would have been a significant achievement when I suppose it was first accessed, because it increased the value of that item very considerably in comparison to what that same cut, for example, might be worth in Europe and France otherwise. So that, you know, has been a milestone really in the last decade for the industry. But I suppose much wider than that, both Japan and Korea are among the top 5 global importers of beef by volume even apart from, the offal type products. So, the industry is always looking for opportunities. Currently, just based on the, I suppose, price situation and the market within Europe and in the UK, many of our, I suppose, primal beef cuts are worth more to stay in the closer to home markets. But that being said, we did see a few examples of cuts over the last few days that there is an opportunity for in these markets. So an example of those would be the short rib. So it's a bone-in cut from the forequarter of the animal that the industry can, I suppose, remove in the deboning hall, leave in the bone, cut it in a certain way that meets, I suppose, the needs and the demands of these markets. And thankfully, there is still a good opportunity here even to achieve prices that are ahead of Europe. Otherwise, I suppose the cuisine in these markets tends to lend itself towards those type of cuts, such as the short rib, but others maybe might include the brisket as well. At the moment, again, as I touched on, it's not as advantageous for us to export that here, but certainly there is demand here. Similarly, a chuck is another example of a product that would be imported here. Again, it comes from the forequarter of the animal, and it's a cut with a good bit of fat in it. But again, such is the markets, in terms of the performance closer to home. In general, exporters wouldn't be sending, that much volume here in terms of those other cuts. However, we did see the development in recent days in terms of, the reputational initiative that is the Chef's Irish Beef Club. We have a number of committed members there that are really keen to endorse the quality of beef that we have. In some cases, it's our breed-specific products, so including Hereford, Angus, even Dexter beef that's coming out here, albeit in not big quantities, but certainly our members there and our high-end chefs are really passionate about that product. I suppose the market here would be towards the kind of, I suppose, flash frying, or rather, much thinner sliced meat, and I suppose stir fry, that type of a format, as opposed to seeing, whether they're 6 or 8 or 10 ounce steaks that are grilled and prepared in restaurants. Like, that is becoming maybe more popular as well, particularly in, hotel groups and kind of more Western style restaurants. But very much, their perception of quality, including around their own domestic Wagyu production, it's not really driven by steak meat. It's driven very much by that traditional thinly sliced, in some cases highly marbled, but certainly a certain amount of fat content is what they're looking for. As I touched on there is the bigger volume opportunity, which includes the tongues, and it includes much of those forequarter cuts, including the short rib especially. And then there is, I suppose, the more niche opportunity, which relates to those high-end chefs that we have a good relationship with, that thankfully now have started to take more regular volumes, including the breed-specific products and the steak meat. It's likely that will continue to develop, and that we will continue to invest in that for our reputation in this market.
Really interesting points there overall, I think, outlined by Joe Burke about what sort of products could actually really get a foothold here in the Japanese market and what that would mean for the primary producers back home. But we'll move on now to an interview with Dale Crammond, the director of MII, who was out here also to try and, I suppose, have relationships, develop conversations with existing clients, try and facilitate that route to market or those particular types of meetings with potential clients for Irish beef, in particular exporters. So we also spoke to him about the popularity of Irish products in the Asian market, and also why Japan would be so significant.
Yeah, look, we've had great week. Stella, we started off in Seoul. It was a great opportunity with Seoul Food there, and it was great to see the members over, engaging with customers. I guess they've been working on relationships for a long time now, so it's finally great to get that access. And we will hopefully see now, exports grow over time. I think the big challenge now is we need to get more plants listed. So hopefully the minister was able to move on that agenda this week. I think the product that we're sending there in terms of the short rib, etc., works very well. They pay the highest price here, so it's a good opportunity. Moving on then to Japan, we've seen obviously yesterday the launch of the three chefs were inducted into the Chefs Irish Beef Club, so that was really exciting. We had a nice lunch yesterday. There's definitely a think. I was engaging with some Japanese journalists, and there is certainly a view that there's more acceptance now around grass-fed beef in this market. So obviously a lot of tongues were sent here, and now it's nice to see some high-end, prime products, prime steak cuts, coming into the market also. What we're always trying to do is, return the best value along the supply chain. Obviously, the market's been incredibly strong, for farmers this year. And we'll have to see how that goes in terms of, prices at a retail level in our main markets in Europe and the UK have had to be passed on. So we'll have to see how that goes. I suppose it's de-risking, our reliance on the UK market as well a little bit. We don't know ultimately what sort of trade agreements that are coming down the road with the UK. It's their prerogative now that they're out of the European Union. So it's having that market access, having the most markets available just gives you options. We don't have an inordinate amount of beef. We don't have extra beef to supply to these markets.
And you said you're optimistic about getting more planned for fruit for export to Japan, because I know you have some plans.
Yeah, it's really on the Korea side. The issue is on the approval of the plants. We need to get the authorities back over. They only listed it in 7 plans last year.
When Agriland and the delegation went to a Wagyu farm north of Kyoto, actually, Dale Crammond also attended, and he also went to see the beef importers, various businesses, and really got a chance to look at the juxtaposition of the way that, for example, Wagyu beef is bred and how it is cut and how it's paid for in Japan versus maybe the fifth quarter or the popular cuts that are coming from Ireland and how they're viewed in Japan. It was a really interesting trip for all of us, as it was a whole group of us going, and we just started to realize that a lot of the issues are still the same in terms of, in the slaughterhouse. Labor is certainly an issue in Japan as it is back home in Ireland, but then there were some nuances within that, and actually we'll have a full feature on Agriland on the Wagyu farm with video in the coming days, so stay tuned for that. But before we wrap up AgriFocus, we also had the opportunity in a very busy schedule for the Agriculture Minister Martin Heydon to sit down and chat about the importance of going to Japan. He, as a government representative, but also the Minister for Agriculture in Ireland, in an EU country, going to a region like Korea and Japan, and what that means, how that can translate back to the primary producer or the beef or dairy farmer back in Ireland, and why it's important to have these kind of face-to-face meetings, particularly actually in the Japanese market, because they very much value relationships and talking to someone and someone's I suppose credentials and their honour as well in dealing with them in business. So we had the opportunity to sit down with Minister Martin Heydon to ask him about the value that he saw in the trip to Japan and other topics that cropped up during that time as well, because he also got to meet the European Commissioner for Agriculture, Christoph Hansen, during this trip in Japan also.
First of all, I'm meeting Commissioner Hansen tomorrow in Osaka. We travel to Osaka in the morning because the World Expo is there. World Expo is a phenomenally huge exhibition, and Ireland has a very big stand there. Our national day, which is like the St. Patrick's Day equivalent of the World Expo, is on Saturday, so I'm the government representative at that with the ambassador. 140,000 visitors a day are going through the World Expo, and this is open for 6 months, so it's a really significant event. Commissioner Hansen been over, has agreed to meet with me, and I have a number of things to talk through with him. Obviously, a top priority is CAP and CAP reform ahead of the announcement of proposals around the multi-annual financial framework or the overall budget, and as well his plan to unveil his proposals for CAP at that time. He's very clear on what Ireland's priorities are that I've set out with him, that I got agreed at Cabinet earlier this year. But having an opportunity to engage with him again at this pivotal time is really, really important. He's well aware of the priority that I have placed on nitrates derogation and on regaining that. He doesn't have final say for that. That comes under the other Commissioner Roswell in DG Envy and Water. I met her at my last Ag-Fish Council meeting in Brussels only a couple of weeks ago, and again we talked through the process in which we're going through there with the series of meetings that are happening in Brussels and the very close work that's happening between my officials in Dublin and in Brussels as we prepare our case for getting the nitrate derogation extended. I had a really constructive meeting with Commissioner Hansen. Commissioner and I obviously discussed Ireland's presidency in the second half of 2026, the key role that Ireland will have to play. My role, or the Minister for Agriculture for Ireland, will have the presidency and the chair of that body of the Ag-Fish Council in the second half of 2026 when the culmination of CAP negotiations is at its height. So we discussed that at length. I also raised, absolute priorities around CAP, around the need for a fully funded single fund with the two pillars. But I recognise Commissioner Hansen wants the same thing. He has been working towards this, and we discussed how I can support him in his efforts, as he is one voice in the Commission, and there are a lot of competing demands which we know. But we discussed the impact of not getting this right, what it would have on our farmers, what it would have on generation renewal, how our farmers have invested heavily in their farms, supported by the Irish government, supported by the EU through measures like TAMS and beyond. Those farmers have bills to repay, loans to pay off. We can't have a drastic change to how our farming system is funded. We discussed that in great depth, and it was a very constructive meeting. I also raised my concerns around the EU deforestation regulation, and I recognise the fact Commissioner Hansen has made great efforts in trying to simplify what is potentially a very problematic regulation to come into effect next year for Irish farmers. I had specific recommendations around how we could make it much more easy to be administered from an Irish perspective. He took those points of view on board, and it's something I'll continue to work closely with him on, because I am really concerned that the regulation at present around deforestation would put a very significant burden on our farmers at a time where we need to reduce the regulation on our farmers, cut red tape, and not increase bureaucracy for them. He knows very clearly the importance of the nitrates derogation for our Irish farming sector, not just for our 7,000 derogation farmers, but for all of the farming ecosystem, because we are hugely interdependent on each other. Obviously, final say around this goes under DG Envy and Water, which is under Commissioner Roswell, but Commissioner Hansen does have a role to play in terms of supporting us in those endeavours, and he's very aware that this is a top priority for us in Ireland this year.
Well, I'm afraid that's all we have time for on this very special episode of AgriFocus from Japan. We hope to be back in the Emerald Isle very soon again, provided all goes well and we're safe and sound during our travels. But our thanks again to our sponsor of the podcast, Axa, and particular thanks to Bord Bia and the Department of Agriculture for facilitating our participation in this trade mission to really go behind the scenes and see that it isn't just lip service, that real work, real graft is put into a trade mission like this to try and get the best for our exports, try and get the best for our agricultural economy back home. So thank you to all the organisers in Bord Bia and the department for facilitating that and inviting us to join and report on it as well. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do share it with anyone you think might like to listen to it, and please do rate and review it on the likes of Spotify or Apple Podcasts by giving it 5 stars. It really does help us make sure that the most amount of people get to listen in every week or every 2 weeks. That's all we have time for now. Until next time, goodbye and take care.
This podcast is sponsored by Axa Insurance. Axa offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the Axa Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to Axa is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to axa.ie. Axa Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.